Hey everybody, Scout Crafty here again. It's Wednesday. What a beautiful day, huh? Look at that. Look at that. Isn't that just a beautiful sight, that flag? Anyway, we got a lot to talk about today. A few things to get started. Let's get downstairs and get started right away. Okay, we are back down the shop where I love to be. And first off, I want to start off by saying a good friend of the show by the name of David Barnes. He had pointed out, remember we were talking about that beryllium, what I thought was beryllium wrench from Amco the other day, this wrench here, and what it was, David pointed out that Amco made a lot of aluminum bronze wrenches, and it was Beryllico that made the beryllium ones. And I didn't know that. I thought they were all beryllium because they all felt and looked exactly, those two alloys look identical. So that's good news if any of you restored any Amco tools and you were afraid you were going to get some kind of toxic dust inhaled from beryllium, because they're not, a lot of them aren't beryllium. He said some of the early ones were, so I looked up this wrench and apparently I think that one is aluminum bronze. So very interesting, and thanks so much, David, for pointing that out. Next up, another good friend of the show, you know him, Bill O'Rourke. We were talking about some old paper receipts from years back, and Bill had a receipt that he found that he collects old stuff like that too. And this was a relative of his had bought something from this company, from Bigelow and Dowse, and they dealt in hardware, bicycles, and electrical supplies. That is right up my alley. If I can only imagine how cool that store was inside. And you could see from this beautiful receipt, look at the printing on there, look at the just how fantastic these things were back then. And look at the handwriting, right? It's unbelievable where we were and where we've come. Not too impressed of where we come, but where we were, I was very impressed. So, Bill, thanks so much for sharing that with us. I'm telling you, I love that kind of stuff. Really interesting. Next up, we got a little show and tell to start off today's episode. And you know how I love the lanterns, and a couple people have been commenting how they find the lanterns interesting, the old-time lanterns. Let me show you one that many of you haven't seen before, pretty unusual one, but very interesting still. Let's go check it out. Okay, what you're looking at here is a Delta power flare, and you can see on the bottom here. Let me get the light just right so you can see the writing. Here we go. You can see it says Delta flashing power flare. And this was issued to the Army, to the different armed forces, but it's, you know, in the traditional Army green here, and during World War II. And what these were these electric flares, more or less. And what made these so interesting is you could see they were kind of made robust. They had a D-ring so you could hang it. It had a different brackets you can put on here, and it had two different ways you can light it. You can light it with a steady light on, as you can see here, that's on. And it also, if you went the other way, it would be a flashing light. And what happens, if you remember this is that type of flashing light that takes a second to warm up, as it just did, and it flashes because it uses like a nichrome wire that will separate. And so you can have a flashing light or a steady light. And what's really interesting, what I like so much about these type of lights is that they were made kind of so robust, and this had a bunch of different accessories. It had like 5 different lenses. This was obviously red. It came white, green, blue, so orange. So depending on if you had a road, you would have a bunch of these down there, and you would say, you know, an orange meant to turn off at a certain one, or blue for certain units to turn off. You go, there was a ton of ways you could use this. If you notice, there's a little shield around here. Now, the one piece I'm missing, that it's nothing more than like a tin can that would fit into here, and it would give the light, it would make sure that you wouldn't see the light from the side. So if you were traveling down the road and you just wanted your unit to see the light, you can have it, that little cone, that shield, would stop the other units from seeing it. So very interesting light. Let me show you the inside, because that's also interesting. To take these apart, there's a little push button here, and you push it in, and once you push it in, you'll see this piece will turn, and there's your battery. This is obviously a newer battery, but you can see it's very clean inside, and it comes with the original instructions here that are in there, tells you how to use it. Very interesting light. Just love this kind of stuff, especially from any kind of World War II, anything like that. I find it totally interesting. Next up, our buddy Mercury Rising had a question about sharpening shears and things like that, but it wasn't about so much how to sharpen the shears. He was more interested about, because that metal is so hard, and I thought that would be a great topic for a discussion, so let's get into that right now. Before we get started to answer Mercury Rising's question, you know, it's funny, I was talking about this hex key the other day, and I looked over and I said, this is 9/16, and Russ pointed out, he said, man, you must have huge hands, 9/16, and he's right, 9/16 is huge. This was a 3, I looked over, see, and the way it looks from an angle, it looked almost like a 9, but it is indeed a 3, you see? So that's why I wasn't even thinking. Of course, 9/16 is huge. So, Russ, thanks for catching that. In case somebody is looking for the key and wondering why it don't fit, that's a 3/16. And also, my buddy Kent, Ready Set, he found these online, and this was a later pair. So these are original to the shears. These this actual type of fastener. The earlier ones had two brass, kind of an ornate brass plug with 2 holes in it, and it used like a pin spanner. Okay, so Mercury Rising question was, when we are cutting, you know, like he wanted to sharpen the shears, but everything he uses, this stuff is so hard. How does he attack it? Now, when we talk about steel, the same type of steel can be hardened to do many different applications. For example, this nail is a somewhat soft steel, and the reason is when you're banging this into a plank, you want it hard enough that it gets the job done, but not so hard that it snaps when you're trying. If it should bend a little bit and you snap it, then it's useless. So it's got to be slightly tempered. Then if you buy some steel rod like this at the hardware store, this is, you know, just, tempered just a little bit harder because people want it, they want to be able to cut it with a hacksaw, but still be able to work with it or use it. Then you have something like this drift punch or something. This is much harder, but again, not so hard that it'll break every time you hit the tip or something. So you walk that thin line between temper and hardness and toughness. Again, hex keys, they're steel too, and they got to be real strong. And then, of course, the hardest would be considered the file. These are extremely hard because they're meant to take metal off of all these other tempers. So you could actually break these, you know, if you push them too hard, and that's why files are notoriously brittle. Now, the scissors fall somewhere between the hex key and the file. They're really hard. So, in answer to the question is, how do you get that to take off any material? Because every time if you try a file, it's just going to skate. And when I say skate, it's just, you know, it's almost as hard as this, so you're not going to be taking off any material. Whereas if you take a file onto this nail, you could see it grips, there's no skating, and you could see it makes a mark because it's taking metal off. And it will do that all the way up, but once you get to here, now all of a sudden you're getting close to the same hardnesses. So whenever you get something real hard like this, you know, like these three that you want to deal with, there's 2 things that you can use. To give you an example of when I say skating across, you'll hear that term a lot of times. This is called a cut nail. And these nails are extremely hard. Some of the hardest material steel you'll find. If you try to cut this with a hacksaw, you wouldn't be able to. You actually will break. If I put it in the vise, it'll break. That's how brittly hard it is. But these were made for special applications. But I'm going to show you what I'm talking about skating across. Here, we're going to mount it into the vise here. And I'm just going to take a file and run it across the top here. I want you to listen closely to what the sound sounds like. Now, this isn't removing any metal. What it's doing, it's just cleaning it up almost. So that's why when we polish tools, we don't have to worry about taking off too much material because it's already hardened. You're just basically finishing the, getting a nice finish. But here, you're not taking any material off. Where if it was a regular, like this one here, watch the difference in what it sounds like. You see it's gripping. You hear it? It's not skating. It's grip. And look it's taking metal off. Not just to finish. It's making this nice. And look at that. See how nice that top's coming out now? But you see the difference? Now, one thing you could use abrasive or flap discs, but remember, because it's so hard, you're going to wear these discs down super fast because it's not taking a lot of metal off, but what it's doing is it's taking the abrasive off the disc. So what's preferred when you get any kind of hard material like a drill bit or anything like that is to use a stone. Now, when we say stone, we're talking about the stone that would go on your normal bench grinder. This is meant to take hardened metal and remove hardened metal. That's what you use. So that's why if you're trying to use a file, you'll never get anywhere because a file isn't strong enough. You got to use a stone to take down tempered or hardened metal. That's why drill bits and chisels and lathe cutting tools, high-speed steel, that's all done with stone, with a grind wheel, because that's the only thing that'll cut through it. You know, you can't do it with, I mean, you could, some of the flap wheels and things like that will do it, but you're going to wear out your flap wheel before you really make any progress. So go right to the stones. That's what they're meant for. So I hope that answers that question. Okay, so what do you say we finish up this video with a quick restoration? Let's get to it. Okay, for today's project, you know how I always say that what I like to do, my favorite part of this hobby is taking an ordinary, average tool and making it collectible or above average, you know? So here we have a beautiful example, real nice shape of a Crescent tool adjustable wrench, and this was from Jamestown, New York. You could see here, and these were the good ones. Good steel, nice wrench, nothing wrong with it. But what do you say we give it a Scout Crafter treatment, make this wrench look like like I would like to see it look like. No surprises here. Again, this wrench doesn't even look like it was hardly used. It was a little bit tight because of, you know, the black ox or whatever they had on there. So let's get started. Okay, our post-wire brush evaluation. No surprises, but like I was saying, see here, see the forging marks here and along here and all along the edges. If you look close here, you see these little, like, what they look like, almost chips, you know, all along here. You know, you don't realize this in the beginning. It chips in the back, you know, this is all the things. And around here, you see, there's almost like facets to this, you know, it looks uneven. This is the things that you want to address to really make this look like something you want to hold and touch. So let's get to that. Now, you know my favorite part. Remember what this wrench looked like before we started. And we're calling this project done. This one here, we just wanted to get it into a shape. And, you know, I usually don't do this, but I went with a mirror finish on here. You know, and it does show up fingerprints and stuff, but I gave it a couple coats of wax. But remember we're talking about back here, about, you know, all the ways that this wrench can look so much improved. And you know, we got rid of all them divots and dimples that were along the edge. Now we left this here. This is the original forging color. It's kind of like a steel gray, but we shellacked it, which also enhances the gray, you know, and protects it from future rusting or anything. So it looks, if you look at it from a distance, it looks almost like a gray was added to there, but that's the original forging pattern that you get. And you could see here now everything is polished out, smooth around the back, around the edges here. So when you grip this, and then we did a little Scout Crafter red in the in the knurling, but it operates super smooth. This thing was beautiful to begin with, as far as closing and everything. It's just, you know, so we just made this wrench, just added a little bit of fit and finish to it, considering what it came from the factory. So in closing, we just added a little fit and finish to an already beautiful wrench, and I I love those old crescents. Anyway, thanks so much for tuning in. Hope you have a great day. Take care now. Bye-bye.